Hey, what's up everybody? Thanks for tuning into another video. In this one, I want to talk a little bit about what it's like working in the service industry during a pandemic. I've been working in restaurants for over 7 years now, and if you've ever been a server or a bartender, you know that it comes with its own unique set of challenges. And these days, those challenges have become more evident than ever before. In this video, I want to share with you 3 things that I've been thinking a lot about lately and share with you my experience over these past few months. I'm going to talk about the risk we face in the service industry, I'm going to talk about money, and then we're going to brainstorm some solutions that I think might be helpful moving forward. First, let's talk about the risk factor. My restaurant opened its doors back up again in June, and whether the staff felt like we were ready or not to face the world again, we had to get back to work. It was definitely strange at first, and it took some getting used to, but eventually we got back into the swing of things. My restaurant did a great job at following the protocols and guidelines set out by the government. We all wore proper PPE. We had a limited seating capacity with proper social distancing and plexiglass between the seats. We implemented a health and safety officer position, and we washed our hands every 20 minutes. But even with all these precautions, we were still in close proximity with all of our coworkers, touching the same surfaces and interacting with lots of guests. Of course, the guests aren't required to wear masks, and even though we provide hand sanitizer at the door, not everyone chooses to use it. The health authorities recommend that we keep our social bubbles small, around 6 people. But everyone who works in a restaurant or a bar, by default, has a much larger bubble than that. Despite our best efforts, our working areas are just not large enough to always maintain social distance, especially for those working in the kitchen. Other work and education environments have come up with innovative ways to conform to the new normal. Office workers have started working from home, the fitness industry came up with a scheduled visit program, and schools took advantage of the internet to make things work as best as they can. Although lots of alterations can be made elsewhere, there really is no real alternative to the restaurant experience. The closest thing is takeout or delivery, and although this helps restaurants from a business standpoint, it doesn't provide a solution for servers or bartenders. It's clear we're put into harm's way every shift we work, and really there's no one to blame for that, but I wanted to just acknowledge it before I move on to the next big point: money. If you've ever worked in the service industry, you know what it's like. We survive off tips. It's really up to the customer how much we take home at the end of each day. But lately there's been another factor at play. Here in Canada, we have the CERB, the Canadian Emergency Response Benefit. A $2,000 a month check given to anybody who is unable to work due to the pandemic. This was a much needed lifeline for servers, cooks, and bartenders who lost their job during the lockdown. But things got really complicated when we returned to work. We could continue to collect the CERB while we were working, but only if we made less than $1,000 a month. For lots of us, this was reasonable. After all, there wasn't as many shifts as there was before. In general, people weren't going out to eat as much as they used to, and the shifts that we did get tended to be shorter than usual. So even including our tips, lots of the time we didn't reach that $1,000 threshold, and we were still able to collect CERB. This worked out for a while, as we would end the month with $2,400 to $2,900. Still less than pre-pandemic numbers, but closer than just receiving CERB and that's it. But as restrictions started to lift and people started going out more, our shifts got longer and we started to work more regular hours. We started earning more on our paychecks and in tips, but it still wasn't enough to live off of. But it was enough that we no longer qualified for CERB. This puts us in a weird spot, working more but earning less. Say you make $1,300 or $1,700 in a given month, and without that $2,000 supplement, that's your new budget. And here in Vancouver, the average rent for a decent 1-bedroom apartment can easily run you anywhere between $1,300 and $1,800, not to mention all the other expenses. So we had to tighten our belts, to say the least. You can see how this is a huge problem. By law, we aren't allowed to ask for less hours so we can still get CERB or EI, and with CERB ending soon, it only makes things even more uncertain. To add insult to injury, here in BC, even more restrictions were just put in place. Moving forward, all bars and restaurants are no longer allowed to serve liquor past 10 p.m. This is a huge blow to anybody who works the night shift. And without CERB or employment insurance, relying on tips alone is going to be really difficult in this new landscape. The other night, not a single customer came into the restaurant past 10 p.m., and I can see this becoming a trend. I understand that all of these restrictions are very necessary, and I'm not saying the government is wrong. I actually agree with the decision and any other creative way to help flatten the curve and reduce our numbers. I'm just illustrating what the implications are. Now let's look at some possible solutions. because long term, we cannot sustain ourselves under current conditions. One thing I would love to see implemented is a universal basic income. CERB has been really amazing, but its restrictions have been limiting. It would be such a weight off the shoulders of Canadians if we had a guaranteed paycheck coming in every month without having to meet any sort of requirements. I know it's not the most popular idea, but I'm really happy to see that it's being brought up more and more in conversations these days. And I think with the proper execution, it could be a permanent solution, or at least until all of this is over. Another thing that could help is some sort of hazard pay. We've already seen this implemented in other industries, so why not the service industry? Like I mentioned before when talking about risk, we have to be at work every week around lots of people in a somewhat risky environment. And we're consistently seeing in the news new cases popping up in bars and restaurants and coffee shops all around the province. Even at my work we had one case. Thankfully it was contained quickly and no other staff were infected. But we are a high risk group. We're working for minimum wage with tips, but these days people are strapped for cash and tipping less and less. So maybe some sort of hazard pay would be a good idea. Another possible solution to the instability would be the creation of a union. Although working as a server or a bartender has been looked at by many as a side gig or a temporary hustle while working towards other goals, many people spend years working in the industry and have a real passion for it, but don't necessarily want to move into management. And at times it can feel precarious, with no benefits, no pension, and ultimately no security. This may be the best time for workers to come together and start demanding more for the work that they do. These are just ideas. I'm no economist or business professional at all. I just feel that something needs to be done by someone sooner rather than later. Ultimately, it just feels like we're being left behind and forgotten about. I don't want this to come across as a sob story or me just complaining for the sake of it. I completely understand that it's tough for everybody right now and we're all just doing our best, and I'm not blaming anyone. I know that it's all just circumstantial. But I am feeling strange these days, like I'm in some sort of a limbo. And with the fall and winter season coming up, the uncertainty is just starting to build with no real solution in sight. Let me know in the comment section below what your experience working in the service industry has been like these past few months. Or if you work in a different industry, I'd love to hear about that too. Be sure to subscribe for more. I post videos every single week on a wide variety of topics, and I'd love for you to be a part of the conversation. Thanks for hanging out, you guys, and I'll see you in the next one.